Texas Motor Speedway absolutely did Texas Motor Speedway things, but did this race redeem the track? What a chaotic and hot race, the hottest race recorded for Texas Motor Speedway in NASCAR Cup Series history. Props to the fans, the crew, the drivers for sticking it out, because I would not have done well with that heat. This race looked like it was going to be won by multiple drivers, but at the end of the day, leading only 6 laps, it was William Byron capturing the win, the 300th win for Hendrick Motorsports. I'm going to talk about this. We usually think about Alex Bowman, his teammate, as the guy who steals wins. This one for William Byron was definitely a race that he stole. He was not a dominant car on Sunday. He didn't have the most speed on Sunday, but he was there when it matters. And I think back to the wins that Byron has had this season, and I feel like it's kind of a trend for him this year. Not necessarily meaning that he's stolen every single race that he's won this year, but look back to Atlanta, look back to Phoenix earlier this year. Those wins have not come from being the most dominant car. They've been from being at the right place at the right time, whether it's the last restart, whether it's being near the front when it starts to rain. So William Byron, maybe he gets the new title of stealing these race wins. I don't know. But again, this makes him the winningest driver this season, or continues that streak for that 2014. This win locks William Byron into the round of 8, and this team can breathe easy heading into Talladega and heading into the Roval. This is one of the more chaotic rounds in the playoffs, and this team does not have to worry about their chances of advancing to the round of 8. They just need to rack up some more stage points, some more playoff points, and they should be kind of set, easy to go heading into the round of 8 and possibly making a good stand for heading into the championship 4. I think if William Byron didn't go into the championship 4, that would be a major shock to me. I think this is his year to try to go for his first championship, but we will have to see. But again, they don't have to worry about the rest of the races in this round, a chaotic round. They just get to move on to the next round of the playoffs. In the second position, Ross Chastain, again, showing a lot of strength during this playoff runs, but very quietly. He had a chance to win this race. His car was a rocket. I think he was one of the more dominant cars on Sunday. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to make it happen. Third place was Bubba Wallace, and he simply said after the race that he choked, and it really happened on that final restart. The one before the final restart, Bubba Wallace, if we stayed green, he probably would have won the race. He was smooth sailing ahead of the rest of the pack, but on that final start, William Byron took him and Chase Briscoe 3 wide to get that first position, get that win. Wallace, though, had a good points day. I feel like he could have capitalized more on it as he led a lot of the stages. Unfortunately, though, his car just wasn't a good long-run car, and he started to fall back with maybe like 5-ish laps to go in these stages. So lost out on some more points than I thought this team could have gotten, but flawless execution on pit road all day long. We don't need these mistakes in the round of 12, especially with Bubba being below that cutoff line in danger of not advancing to the round of 8 yet again. Though, we have Talladega this coming week. That is a great track for this 23 team. Of course, it is a race of survival. Who can last out over all of these cautions that we're probably going to have, knowing the chaos that these playoff races have just had so far. But for that 23 team, nothing to hang their head about. Solid day for Bubba Wallace. In 4th place, Christopher Bell. In 5th place, Denny Hamlin. For me, one of the more dominant cars. Him and Kyle Larson were probably one of the more dominant cars on Sunday. Unfortunately, though, for Denny Hamlin, that race-winning car was destroyed on pit road by his teammate, Ty Gibbs. I don't know what ended up happening here, but Ty just rammed into Denny as he was exiting pit road. Of course, I feel like somebody could have told Denny, hey, Ty is like charging towards you on pit road. Don't exit your pit box. But at the same time, I feel like Ty shouldn't have been in the lane that he was in. Ty admitted, this was his fault. You're going to learn from it. So kind of sucks. That ended Ty Gibbs' day, and for Denny Hamlin, ended his race-winning day. I mean, obviously a top 5 finish, but not where I think that 11 team could have been at the end of this race. In 6th place, no longer a playoff driver, but that was Kevin Harvick. 7th, Brad Keselowski had decent speed all race long. I do want to talk more about his teammate, Chris Buescher, who finished in that 14th position. Again, he had a great stage 1, great stage 2, got stage points. He actually finished second in that first stage. Unfortunately, though, that last stages were just, I don't want to say chaos ensued for that team because it really wasn't chaotic, but their strategy just didn't work out. They got run into by a few cars. No wrecks, though, just bumping and banging, and weren't able to get back into that top 10. So an unfortunate end of the day for that 17 team, especially because I thought they could have at least contended for a top 10, maybe even a top 5, but they will move on to Talladega and just kind of reset. In the 17th position, Martin Truex Jr. And then the 25th position, Tyler Reddick. Had a pretty decent car on Sunday. Unfortunately, got himself kind of back in the middle of the pack. Slammed into the wall with around 13, 15-ish to go. And it caused one of the larger wrecks of the race on Sunday. Unfortunately, one of the cars impacted by this wreck was Erik Jones, who was running in the top 5, top 3 all day long, had a race-winning car as a non-playoff driver, which I feel like is maybe common with this Gen 7 car, especially with what we saw last year, but with this equipment that Legacy Motor Club has brought during the playoffs, it has been impressive versus what they've done in the regular season. Carson Hocevar has done a great job taking over in that 42 car, and Erik Jones showing that he just has raw speed, raw talent in this 43 and is able to contend with the big dogs. So very impressive run for them. It's unfortunate that it ended the way it did because they did not deserve the finish that they got. They deserve to finish this race in the top 5 where this car belonged all day long. And this wreck impacted Ryan Blaney, who had a very up and down day. Of course, did not qualify well, was able to work his way through the field, and then he got a speeding penalty near the end of the race, which set him back in the pack. And when you're back in the pack, you are prone to chaos, and that is exactly what happened to this 12 team. So unfortunate for them. It's just, you got to move on to Talladega. Again, this is a great track for Ryan Blaney. It's a great track for several drivers, but you never know. It's a crapshoot, again, with these super speedway races. So hopefully it's a good showing for Ryan Blaney, but it puts them in a very interesting point situation. Another playoff driver that did not finish this race, Kyle Larson, who was on track to be your race winner, a dominant car on Sunday. Unfortunately, though, with these side-by-side races that we're seeing with this Gen 7 car, if there's one car on the inside, one car on the outside, typically the car on the outside is going to take the air away from that inside car, and that's exactly what happened to Kyle Larson. Got him loose and spun him around. Him and Wallace, who were fighting for the lead at that time, they did not make contact. It was an aero issue. Larson post-race said he just kind of lost it and he should have given Wallace more space. So it was just a tough racing incident, unfortunate for that 5 car. It would have been historic, the 5 car getting Hendrick Motorsports their first win, and the 5 car getting Hendrick Motorsports their 300th win would have been pretty cool stat. But yet again though, William Byron getting that win after all of that, but unfortunate for Kyle Larson. The result that shocked me the most though was Kyle Busch not finishing this race. RCR as a whole had an awful weekend in terms of finishing positions for this race, both cars out due to wrecks. This is one of Kyle Busch's best tracks, so I was expecting for this to be a great showing for him in this tough round of 12. Unfortunately, though, for that 18 near the end of stage 1, Kyle Busch thought he had an issue. He thought he had a tire going down, kind of signaled to his team. The team told him to, hey, tough it out. We don't see anything that's necessarily wrong. And then Kyle Busch spun out, hit the wall, significant damage to that car, actually backed his car all the way up to pit road. Very impressive. What I think was interesting, though, was his demeanor after this wreck. Usually we see him kind of fired up, kind of angry, but he seemed distraught. If that's a word I can use to describe Kyle Busch's emotions or his presence in that moment, he seemed just kind of lost. He feels like he's letting his team down. He even talked about how every time he's trying really hard, something bad happens. And I feel like it's such an odd mentality to see Kyle Busch have, where he just seems just disappointed, lost, maybe a lack of confidence, which just, again, doesn't seem like Kyle Busch, but I think this is the race that they had circled on their calendar as one that they could win to lock themselves into the round of 8. And it's unfortunate that it didn't happen for them. So moving forward into Talladega, yet again, Kyle Busch had a great showing at Talladega earlier this year, had a chance to win the race, all things considered. So we'll have to see what the future has in store for this 8 team, but that is your finishing positions for the playoff contenders, your top 10, and a little bit more thrown in there as well. I'm thinking back to a few weeks ago when we started the playoffs at Darlington and the chaos that happened at that race that hurt a lot of these drivers' chances to advance to the next round. Same story happens at the beginning of the round of 12 with this Texas race. We see a lot of drivers that struggled during this event that got them below the cutoff line or a lot lower in the point standings. I'm talking about Ryan Blaney, who is minus 11, and Kyle Busch, minus 17. And unfortunately, because of the poor finishing position that Tyler Reddick had during this race, it gets him below that cutoff line, minus 3. And Bubba Wallace actually gains from behind that cutoff line. He's now minus 2 with a great chance to get above that cutoff line at Talladega. The one that shocks me the most, the driver that shocks me the most in these point standings right now is Kyle Larson. Dropped significantly. He is plus 2 to the good, treading water above that cutoff line. And I will say, Kyle Larson in super speedways, not the best of friends, so going into Talladega, I'm nervous for that team. They have a great chance at the Roval, Great Road Course Racers, but still, if I was that 5 team, I would be kind of nervous going into this race weekend. So I don't know what to think about this race. I'm very back and forth on it, and you all know that I'm not a huge fan of Texas Motor Speedway to begin with and the product it produces. It's just, like, I don't know. With this Gen 7 car, I mean, I feel like the product has been better. Like, I feel like the races have genuinely been better versus what we saw in the Gen 6. The issue is, though, we're banking on chaos and carnage to, I think, make the racing at Texas look better. Last year when we went to this race, I think it was a track record of how many cautions we had in a single event. And don't quote me on that, but I think we either got there or we were very close. This race had not as much carnage, but enough carnage for me to be like, okay, well, was the race good because the carnage made the race interesting, or was it because of the product? And I don't know. On a negative, I feel like the tire compound that we brought this past weekend just wasn't good. I feel like there was little to no tire fall off. Tires really didn't give you an advantage. It was full track position, which is fine. It's okay. But I feel like we could have done a little bit more with tire wear. On a positive though, I feel like we widened out this track pretty quickly. It wasn't just a single groove track to start off for a long period of time. We kind of widened out the track, moved up the groove pretty early on, which I think is a positive. Another positive is we did get some pretty good side-by-side battles, and I'm talking about this battle between Kyle Larson and Bubba Wallace. That was pretty entertaining. It was unfortunate how it ended for Kyle Larson with him just having the air taken off his car and him spinning, but it was still pretty entertaining. On the downside though, the most entertaining parts of this race did happen on the restarts, and I don't like, and I guess maybe hypocritical for this, maybe not, but I don't like when you have to use these restarts to make the race interesting. It should be in the product itself, and that's why I lean back a little bit from maybe this product is significantly better with the Gen 7 car, because again, these restarts made this race interesting. Otherwise, it was really hard to advance through the field for most of these cars. Because I'm so indifferent about this race, I don't know. It was better than what we had last year, and I rated this race last year like a 30-something%. So I'm going to give this one a 50%. It's on the line. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was a Texas race, I guess, but I guess better than what we've seen in the past. Now, the big question is, you know, there's been talks for years, I guess, about reconfiguring Texas Motor Speedway. When is that going to happen? What is that going to look like? Talks about this being maybe a short track. Talks about this being another track like Atlanta. And I would say, like, just reconfigure it to make it a good 1.5 miles. We need more of those on the schedule. Maybe reconfigure it to be kind of more like a Kansas, maybe even more like a Homestead, because what we have now just isn't working. But we don't need another super speedway. We don't need another super speedway like track like Atlanta. We don't need another short track, at least not right now with the package issues that we're having. Just give me another good 1.5 miles and call it a day. What did you think about the Texas race? I've seen a lot of people that are kind of back and forth on it, whether you hated it or liked it. Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Make sure to check us out at AboveTheYellowLine.com and all of our social media platforms, plus TobyChristieCom for more NASCAR news. We'll have a special guest on the live stream this Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure to join us then. And to hear who the guest is, make sure to follow me on social media for that announcement. But that's it for today, and we are headed into Talladega. Get ready, it's going to be a great race, hopefully. But thank you all so much for your support, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye. Want more NASCAR content? Make sure to click the videos on the screen and the links in the description.